Today's conversation is about why you don't need to see photography as a technical pursuit and instead give yourself permission to start walking a creative path. Cameras are tools of art and expression. How much technical knowledge do you really need to start being creative with the camera? I found myself giving a presentation at a camera club the other week about something completely central to my work, yet very, very tricky to define: creativity. It was one of those moments that makes you step back from what you do and contemplate exactly how it is that you do it. As a beginner to photography, learning to be more creative is one of the hardest challenges in front of you. In comparison, learning how to drive your camera dials, why you might want to swap to a different lens, or just mastering some of the advanced features of processing raw files are relatively straightforward tasks. You can tell when you've got it right. But what I want to focus on today are a selection of tangible shifts you can make to how you think about your own photography. These are some practical ideas on where you might connect with your own creativity and why that is so important. You don't need to know everything about your camera to be a creative photographer any more than you need to know everything about how your engine works to drive your car. It matters if you run out of fuel or water, but most of what happens under the hood can happily remain a mystery. Learning the technical aspects of your camera for the sake of knowledge is not necessarily a path to creativity. Getting better acquainted with the controls and features of your camera, that can be beneficial in some instances. But knowing how is not the same as knowing why. Each time you learn the technical foundation for a new technique or feature on the camera, you are adding another tool that may prove useful on your creative journey. Our motivation for learning anything technical is towards opening a door to something creative. This is why technical knowledge and creative ability are not mutually exclusive, but neither are they dependent on each other. You can be creative with minimal technical knowledge, just as you can have complete technical knowledge and still fail to be creative. If you worry that you're not technical enough with your skills, then stop worrying. There's always potential to learn something useful, but please don't feel you need to learn everything to achieve anything. There are a handful of technical skills which underpin my photographic style and my version of creativity. I like to shoot with a wide lens and a wide aperture. I've written literally dozens of articles about why wide is wonderful. I won't repeat all that here. What I will emphasize is the day I bought myself a 24mm f1.4 prime lens was the day I turned a corner with my photographic style and my creativity. That lens became a creative tool for me to experiment with, and it took me down a path which resonated perfectly with something inside my brain. I love shooting shallow depth of field to highlight my subject, and I love shooting wide angle to embrace the maximum supporting context. And I love bringing those two things together. Learning the right technique, skill, or tool to match your style will give you the best opportunity to express your creative voice. Because it's not about doing things the right way, it's about finding what is your way. The end goal isn't a perfect photo. The end goal is a photo that reflects your love of photography and expresses what you want to say. The key word here is expression. That is my litmus test for success. The heart of creativity is the act of expression. This is a recurring theme for my teaching, but it's worth restating as a foundation for this conversation too. When you capture an image, you are attempting to express something with it. The camera is your voice. It carries intent when held in your hands. Eventually, you share that image with an audience, be it online or on a wall, and you are expressing your perspective in that process. There is no such thing as an impartial camera. It always assumes the intention of the photographer holding it. There are no absolutes in photography. There is no such thing as an accurate image. Every step of a photograph's life is open to interpretation by the photographer. Where you stand to shoot the image, when you choose to capture a scene, which elements you include or exclude, what kind of editing you apply to the image, or even the curation of frames for a presentation. Each of these moments presents choices for the photographer that can change the content of the image and the message it conveys. Every image is just a representation of the original reality, subject to choices made by the photographer. How that person sees the world is a filter that becomes then applied to the image, whether they are conscious of it or not. There is no absolute truth in a photograph, even though it may contain an immense amount of truth, especially from the photographer's perspective. This is the flip side of what I mean when I say the camera looks both ways. The photographer is always present in the photo, and a good photographer is not only conscious of this, but leans into it. We tend to think of the photograph as being real and honest and genuine. We revere its documentary nature. We want to think that the camera is neutral and fair, but this is an illusion. Every step of the way there is influence from the photographer. Indeed, the image is only interesting when the photographer's perspective is driving it. When you take a photo, you are engaged in art, not documentary. You are engaged in expression, not neutrality. The idea of documentary is an illusion. Photography is art. I once wrote an entire article on the idea that there is almost nothing truly original in this world. We are all products of external influences. But that doesn't mean we can't create something truly unique. The question is, to what extent can we follow our influences and still regard our work as creative? Here, there is a paradox at work. One of my favourite processing styles is to drop my raw files into black and white, tinker a little with the contrast and warm up the split tones so I get a bit of dusty warmth in the midtones. Hardly original and completely derivative from a century of film-based black and white photography that came before me. It is a lazy way for me to bring some treatment to a set of images and have them work together as a set. Dropping into black and white is hardly an original act. But does that mean it's not creative? My final result is a unique collection of images that pull together harmoniously to make a bespoke and powerful presentation, then surely that qualifies as creative. There is a sense here that the impact of an image tells us something about the creative quality it possesses. After all, an image can be unique yet forgettable, when really what we want is something of beauty to emerge from our creativity. I would describe this ability of an image to have impact as the depth of an image, where its ability to evoke an emotional response is based on layered information within it. Now we find ourselves standing on the intersection between storytelling and composition. When I talk about layers, I could be referring to either of these. Literal layers in the composition, where a foreground and background embrace the subject, but also meaningful layers, such as the location and vocation. Each time you build layers into your composition, you are heading in a direction that can lead to something both creative and unique. Layers of context within an image give it depth, and expression gives it meaning. The more you learn about composition, the more you find yourself in control of your storytelling as well. You are gaining a technical skill that will help you express your creativity. The trouble with most commercial photography is that it leaves very little scope for being truly creative. Some commissions are built around a strong concept to produce high impact content, but the concept and creative flow usually belong to an agency rather than the photographer. That's just the nature of the beast. You can't expect to get paid a bucket of money and still indulge in whatever creative fantasies take your fancy. You're doing work for someone else. This is one reason I love running photo tours and workshops, because I don't have to shoot anything for a client and I can indulge myself in any artistic direction that pleases me. And I usually do exactly that. For many photographers who connect with the craft through a camera club, my photo tours offer a similar opportunity to step away from the constraints of that club and just be themselves. Camera clubs are great environments to learn skills in a structured way and to progress with those skills. But the flip side to standardization of the photographic process can be to stifle creative expression. If you shoot to please the judges, then you may not be shooting to please yourself. It's very similar to the constraints I have with my commercial clients. Any opportunity to step away from these constraints is an opportunity to grow your creativity. There's a big difference between conforming to a genre and being inspired by it. The key here is to pick strong and varied influences and to take your photography into directions that would otherwise not present themselves in your existing environment. Anything that takes you outside your comfort zone is a good thing. Telling the story. This may seem a tired and worn out expression when it comes to photography, but it holds value, and these words have become shorthand for a great many more truths. If photography is an active expression, then you're going to need a story to express. Shooting images for the sake of an image is a hollow process, and that quickly shows. Without a depth of story behind the image, there is rarely any depth within the image. And the creative power of an image comes down to the depth of impact it makes on the audience, not the photographer. Portrait photography in particular is one area where I see this pattern over and over. The photographer gets very excited about the moment captured in the frame, but the audience less so. Too often the image being offered up is a result of slick lighting, but devoid of any meaning or intent from behind the camera. Too often there is no story to tell. Starting out in photography is not only a challenge to learn how to take photos, but why to take photos. What is the story you are trying to capture? I had one chap on a photo tour about 10 years ago who was a lovely person, but totally lost with his compositions. Whenever he would show me a photo and ask for some critique, I would stare into the chaos, confused and reluctant to speak because I never knew what the subject of the photo was. He would point his lens down a street and just capture anything and everything. I had a devil of a time trying to help him until he grasped the idea of telling a story. For him, that was the right framework to bring focus to his focus. For him, telling a story begins with deciding who the story is about. And in that moment, the art of composition revealed itself and it opened up a whole new path for him. Telling a story means the subject of the photo is your hero, around which you try to bring a little extra context and build layers into the composition. The foundation here is looking for the hero amongst a chaotic scene and then exploring your creative tools to tell that story. You decide who the hero is, you decide what to say about them, you decide what the photograph should be. None of this is accidental. All of which comes back to the idea that you need to put experience before exposures. It's a cornerstone of my philosophy when shooting. When you put down the camera and let yourself experience a place first, it gives you a chance to connect with your subject, the location or the people, and identify what is special, what it is that you want to say. You need to know the story to express the story, so you have to give space for real experiences to happen before you pursue the image. This is also a fundamental difference between the art of photography and the rise of AI-generated content. Maybe that's better explored in a separate video, but let me just say that what is mostly missing from AI images is the human experience that gives meaning to it. Photography isn't about pixels, it's about people. The people who take the photos, the people who appear in the photos, the people who care about our landscapes and wild places, the people who want to learn about the places and the birds and the species that are in your images, the people who took the time to share what matters in their lives. It seems obvious to most of us, but in practice, the challenge of experience before exposures requires a little dedication to achieve. It requires you commit to slowing down your travels, slowing down the moment and letting yourself be generous with your time. If you walk into a market in Yangon with only 10 minutes to shoot and run, please don't expect you to capture a prize-winning photo from that experience. It takes time to build depth with your experience, to talk to market holders, to observe the ebb and flow of a place, and work out where the stories are actually happening. They're not always blindingly obvious, especially the best ones, which is where I come back to my mantra: go slow, get closer, look for the light. One of the most fundamental steps towards being more creative with the camera is simply giving yourself time to slow down and experience your craft to the full. When you take it slow, you have time to engage with your subject, time to get close to them and learn a little something. Taking time gives you a chance to earn a little intimacy, which will later be evident in the photos. Time spent understanding your subject leads to better expression. And the creative path is all about expression, your expression. You may not be the first person in the world to hang a black and white picture on the wall, but that doesn't mean you can't make it a unique offering that is worthy of attention. I want to finish off this conversation about creativity with something that may seem obvious in hindsight, but is almost universally overlooked in practice. More often than not, photographs come in collections. It's rare that we share a single photo. A single magazine story has pages full of photos on that same story. Your Instagram feed has hundreds, if not thousands of photographs telling pieces of your life. Your website is likely divided into themes or sets of images. Any gallery collection is a carefully curated set of images brought together to tell a narrative that is greater than any one image could tell. Photographers don't just take photos, they curate photos as well. Because even though a single photo can say 1,000 words, it takes a curated set of images to tell the whole story. The art of curation itself is indeed a whole other skill set. We obsess over what brand of camera and what kind of lens to shoot with or which software to edit photos in. But how you present and choosing what photos to share are actually just as important and potentially just as rewarding. Years ago, I designed a workshop for curation that I ran online over several weeks. And every time I've run this workshop, we get a bunch of people who suddenly rediscover their joy in photography. People who suddenly start seeing the value in their own photography, because there are stories to be told that are greater than any single photo. I watch people pull together a photo essay with images that never stand a chance of winning prizes at the camera club, but curated into a set, they elegantly and decisively tell the story that the photographer is trying to tell. There's this moment of deep satisfaction when these folks share a curated set with our group. We all watch and we get it. We totally get what they are saying through the images. We are with them on that journey. We are pulled into their world and we get to see the world for just a little moment through their eyes. Photography at its best is full of this kind of joy. It's not a passive experience at all. It's a conversation between the photographer and the audience. Whether you're sharing your images on social media or on a wall or online, all that matters is that you've made the effort to collect pieces of a story and then try to assemble those pieces in a way that other folks can interpret for themselves. We lose sight of just how irrelevant cameras are to photography. YouTube is wall-to-wall reviews of camera gear and lenses. The algorithm only ever promotes my videos when I spend 15 minutes talking about a macro lens or comparing two camera bodies. you can easily lose sight of what photography is all about. It's not about cameras, it's about the photo, it's about expression, it's about creativity, it's about art. Thanks for sticking through this video, and I hope you are inspired to step further along your own creative journey. I have a lot of other videos on my YouTube channel that might be of interest to you on that journey too. Some are more technical, some are not at all. Please have a rummage about, and please let me know what resonates for you, as that helps me to refocus my efforts for future videos. Have a great day.